in trouble, and that we need to prepare for the future. And in an uncertain future, you know, like you want to sort of start at the top of your list of necessities, and food is right up there. Of course, everybody has to eat 3 times a day. And we need to start thinking about the whole food system into relation to everything else that we're doing when it concerns nature. Yeah.
And when you say think about the food system, can you tell me what you feel that the handicaps and the concerns are about our food system these days?
Well, I think that we're quite unrealistic about our ability to cope with an emergency such as like a massive earthquake. And they're always saying, get ready for the big one, we're overdue, which is very calming, you know. And then when you find out that 85% of the food we consume on these islands is shipped in on a ferry, on a truck, and we're quite dependent on our food being imported, when I think, wow, you know, 5-year vision that we could transform the entire Vancouver Island to becoming a major agricultural zone. We've got the climate, and we've got the land, and we've got the youth, you know, the workers. I don't know what's stopping us. I've been questioning that for so long, and maybe now's the time. I'm not sure, you know, that we actually do the right thing and get on with it. But I think from the grassroots that people feel antsy and they want to do something. And well, just getting outside in a pandemic is a good thing too.
Oh, it is. Any excuse to get out in this beautiful springtime weather. Welcome again, everyone, to Gabbing About Gardening. My name is Lucretia Shanfarber. Just call me Lou for obvious reasons. Today, we are so blessed, literally, to have Carolyn Herriot with us. Carolyn has been a long-time hero of mine. I was telling Carolyn I started reading her book. I think it was one of your first ones, Carolyn. This
204, yeah.
A Year on the Garden Path, and how often I refer back to it. But today we're going to focus on the work Carolyn has done related to the 0 Mile diet, and how growing food is really the answer to, well, everything maybe. What do you think, Carolyn?
Yes, it sounds simplistic, all right, but I think that staying connected to Mother Nature is a very good thing. And, you know, it's has a profound effect on our psyche when we're not connected. And the world is heading as fast as possible into the future, which is completely synthetic and man-made, including our food. And I sort of wonder what that does to humanity, you know, in terms of actually what kind of future is it that we're heading towards? And here's an opportunity to slam the brakes on with the pandemic and actually think about that and consciously move into the future with a vision about, you know, the kind of world that we actually want it to be and look like. And to my thinking, I'm not a particularly intellectual person, but I don't know. I just think that there are certain things that we need to change and do differently, a lot differently than we have been doing in order to go on surviving on this planet.
Well, I think a lot of people are thinking very much like you're thinking, Carolyn. I know I am, and most of the folks who are joining us on Gabbing About Gardening are certainly thinking about similar things, being more conscious about how we move into the future and the way that gardening plays such an important role in our future, in our food security, in the security of our children, our grandchildren, our planet. I'm Lou. Welcome to Gabbing About Gardening. Today, our very special guest is Carolyn Herriot, and Carolyn is gabbing about the 0 Mile diet. She's going to explain what that is, and ultimately, it's about growing food. Carolyn's going to be gabbing about growing our own food, why it's more important than ever. She's going to be giving us a lot of tips from beginner to experienced gardener. Carolyn has been gardening and teaching about gardening since the 1980s. Like I said, Carolyn, you've been one of my big heroines, and I've been to many of your talks. Thank you so much for joining us today. I just want to remind everyone that Gabbing About Gardening is based on the gift economy, and that means that we hope to bring you a gift of information, sharing, inspiration, something you can take away and share with others and use in your garden. There are 47 gardening souls together here right now. If you'd like to give back to Gabbing About Gardening to keep us growing, to keep us going, your money goes towards an honorarium for our guest speaker. We give at least half of everything that is donated to our guest speakers. And we also support a wide array of gardening education programs. We are supporting Morag Gamble's Perma Youth program in Africa. Many of you joined us when Morag Gamble was with us, and we're supporting other garden education programs. So our goal is to spread the word about the culture of the garden all over our planet. We truly are made to be gardeners. And Carolyn, I'm going to share, I'm going to co-host with you now. I know you've created a wonderful PowerPoint that you can launch into any time that you feel ready to do that. Let me just get you on as co-host. I'm going to be dropping into the chat box the email address for making any donations that you feel you would like to give to us. We're up to 54 people. I'll just keep letting people in. Carolyn, are you ready to tell us all about gabbing? Are you ready to gab about growing food, basically?
Yes, more food is the mantra. I'm just going to click on then and share and get the PowerPoint started. So.
Perfect. Thank you so much. What a beautiful day on this Easter Monday. Thank you everyone for joining us. It's lovely to have you with us. Carolyn Herriot has been teaching gardening to all levels of people for over, what is it now? If it was the 80s, is that almost 40 years? Gosh.
Oh, I don't want to think about it.
Yes, but you know, the wonderful thing about thinking about it is think of how much you've learned and how much you've shared in those 40 years. That's what's so amazing to me, that
yes,
that you had so much to share.
There's a lot of things we've discovered in the last 40 years that we were doing in ignorance of before. So yeah, that's actually going to be part of the talk. Yeah, do you want me to start then?
I love it. Thank you, Carolyn.
Okay, lovely to be with you, everybody. Have happy Easter Monday. And thanks for taking some time out on a special day of celebration to be together talking about gardening. So yes, I guess I'm a little bit of a political being. I didn't want to be an activist, but these days it seems that, you know, you have to be. So for me, it's always been, I've been concerned about health most of my life and involved in things like working in health food stores and eventually landing up actually growing the food and saving seeds of the food. And I've always believed that you are what you eat. And I've also always had a belief that my body was able to take care of me and look after my health if I looked after my body. So I was interested in finding out how I worked and the best things to feed this machine with, this supercomputer of mine. Anyway, so this is the updated food guide for Canada. They've just revamped it and they've made it really, really simplistic. You can just look at it and see that half the plate is fruits and vegetables, and then a quarter of the plate is whole grain foods. And the other quarter is the protein foods, which is not necessarily a slab of steak, not meat-centric eating, but is made up of a mix of different sources of protein, plant proteins such as kidney beans and lentils, and there's eggs and fish and a little bit of meat on the plate. That's absolutely fine. So it's, you know, that's kind of the guide for the way that we should be eating daily for good health. And, you know, this is sort of what I come from, a background of learning about health and reading and studying and getting far too much information, that when I see something like this, that there are something like 56 pesticide residues on a conventionally grown strawberry. And so, you know, you're not just getting something which is like, tastes like cardboard for $3 in a clamshell, shipped in from God knows where all over the world. If we have to eat fruit out of season, you know, when we could be eating homegrown organic strawberries, and there's only one ingredient in that, and that is a strawberry, with nothing extra. So I decided I really didn't want the extras. And then I also got rather sort of suspicious about the food in the supermarket when I found out that 90% of processed foods contain genetically modified ingredients, because if you're using canola oil or anything with high fructose corn syrup, all those long-winded names that no one can pronounce on the food packages are basically coming from genetically modified corn and soy, which is dominating the agricultural millions of acres that we grow. And what's happened to agriculture? And I thought to myself, wow, I really want to know what's in the food that I'm eating and how it's affecting me. And I want to know, I mean, when they say it's organic, what does that mean? And if it's been shipped on a container overseas and produced en masse, then a lot of those organic greens that we get that say they're organic in clamshells, actually they're grown in many, many different countries in such a scale that one wonders how they could be organic, because they don't replenish the soil. So my background is like, just wanting to feel confident about the food I was eating, and also I wanted to eat real food and know that the food I was eating was going to nourish me instead of, you know, poison me, that it had something been genetically modified, or that it had Roundup residues on it, which a lot of food does now. The cereals have been permeated with Roundup residues, and it's an absolute horror story. So I said to myself, okay, that's it. There's only one source of food I can really trust, and that is I'm going to have to grow it myself. And that's what I set out to do. And I was looking at also supporting real food production, which is regional. I believe in bringing our food back home, environmentally sustainable, so that we're not compromising the soil and destroying everything we touch and poisoning as we go. Agricultural land use, which we could invest in for the future. And in fact, I have this real concern about the future, because I want to know, with so many farmers in their 60s now, and they're leaving, they don't want to continue, so the farms go up for sale, and the kids don't want to farm, so they want to cash in, and there's no succession plan. And so then I'm asking, I'm not sure who's going to be feeding us and how everyone is going to be fed in the future, but you know, it's a sort of like, doing this is like saying I stand for real food, and I will go on growing my own food or supporting regional farmers and buying local, as long as I can, and make that possible. So, you know, for me, the reality is it's about seasonally appropriate eating, and fresh and organic. And, you know, it's amazing, the 0 mile diet, because it's never boring, because you actually eat in season. Like right now, we're just waiting for the asparagus to pop up, and then we'll be gorging on asparagus. and then we'll have the rhubarb, and there'll be lots of wonderful, and the strawberries will follow. So, you know, a lot of the year-round diet is determined by, you know, what's in the garden for eating. And this is in answer to what is a zero-mile diet. In the fridge, it looks like this. Because it's a busy time putting the food from the garden away for year-round eating. But lots of preservations, lots of things like chutneys and pickles and pickled peppers and sauces, apple sauces, sauerkraut, you know, plenty of fresh fruits and vegetables, and lots of jams and things like that. So it's amazing how you can grow enough food and have enough to put aside for year-round eating. But when I think about sustainable food production, I always say the survivor comes out in me. And actually, my survivor is screaming right now. I don't know about yours, but I'm not really enjoying what I'm seeing happening in the world right now. I don't think anybody is. And we've never been here before. So I think, you know, that's why people have all gone back to the garden, because they're really concerned about disruption and the unknown. Like, you know, are we still going to be able to grow the food in floods and fires and things like that? And, you know, what's going to happen with nationalism? Like we see this with vaccine nationalism. They don't want to share the vaccines. So is that going to happen with food the same? That when crops fail in California because of drought, you know, they'll feed their people first. And then we should be really, I think, the discussion has been going on for years, that we should be more self-sufficient in food production in Canada, that we're not growing nearly enough food to feed Canadians, and especially for us here, island people, where the food is coming to us on the ferry. That is something serious to think about. But I say there's no such thing as sustainable food production without having the seeds with which to grow the food, because if you don't have that, you ain't got any food. And I always used to question, never actually believing that I would live to see the day when it happened. I said to myself, what would happen in a crisis if suddenly everybody around the world decided that it was a good idea to start growing food to make sure that they had something to eat in disruption? There would be a shortage of food seeds. And then who would decide who would get the seeds? It's basically first come, first served. And so I decided, you know, that was the other part of, like, I'm always going to make sure that I'm growing something that I can save seeds from for future harvests. And I think that's really important when we discuss food security. And so actually, while I was growing my own food, which I was really ecstatic to say I discovered only took 5 years from start to saying to my husband, wow, somebody isn't muted there, Lucretia. Maybe Sue. Yeah, there we go. You know, it took 5 years for us to realize that we'd actually managed to establish a garden that fed us year round from clay fill. Was pretty amazing. And that's a very exciting prospect, because you realize how much could be done in rather a short space of time. But I started collecting seeds from the open pollinated varieties of food plants, and then sharing them with people, with seeds of Victoria. And, you know, at that point, I mean, especially now when I look at the cost of seeds, I can't believe I'm paying $1 for one tomato seed these days. That just about blows me away. I never thought I'd see the day. Wow, that's incredible. But anyway, the price goes up and the demand goes up and the supply is limited, as we found out last year. So it does make a lot of sense to grow open pollinated plants that you can save seeds from. This is Celebration multicolored Swiss chard. And that's just a short row of chard which fed us all winter, which we then, you know, allowed to go to seed, and then we just collect buckets full of seed which is enough to feed so many people. And so why not? But 6 years ago, my husband and I, we moved from Victoria, and I left Seeds of Victoria behind. And then I had all these seeds and I didn't know what to do with them. And so I had this vision of this name called Incredibles. And actually, they're heritage open pollinated food plants. And I realized, wow, I can grow out the seeds and then distribute them as bedding plants for people to grow food. And then they've actually got the seeds that they need for the next few crops in their back garden. So all they have to do is just allow some of the plants to go to seed. So I thought this was really a good idea to share, to give the gardener a choice between having F1 hybridized, which is mainly what you get when you buy commercial vegetable plants, and the open pollinated ones. So as luck would have it, when we moved, we didn't know this, but we moved to a place that was across the road from a 5-acre farm. And the year after we moved, this farm went on the market for sale. So we bought it. And then this is a friend who's ready to farm, who came to farm for us, Golden Rose. And we started growing all our own food on the farm. So it was rather nice. And she called it Deep Roots Farm. So I said to Goldie, I mean, I'm sort of retired now, but I said to her, you know, Goldie, what we should do is, like, you're just one person, you know, how are you going to farm, you know, all by yourself? You need help, and we also need to build community. So let's have a farm school, and let's teach other people while we grow together. We're hands-on farming. And so 3 years in a row now, we've had farm school where we've had people come and basically hands-on learning how to seed things from start and how to plant them out, and you know, all the way through till saving seeds of them at the end of the day. So I thought I'd just share some ideas with you and some of the things that I've learned over the last many years of growing food and other things too. But what if some people would say, what if you don't have a garden? And then I say, well, actually, you know, that's fine. You don't need a garden to grow food, because there are so many ways of getting around that if you want to, such as a simple cedar planter box, which you can purchase from the hardware store. Or you can actually get delicious strawberries. I stole one of these to try to see what the flavor was like, and it was really good. And, you know, early crop of strawberries hanging in a pot like that under cover in a green conservatory or greenhouse or something. And my friends Gord and Anne, you know, they just took a simple, really heat absorbing black plastic barrel and slit it open, cut it open at the top and turned it into a planter for basil. Basil, being a heat lover, you know, absolutely thrives in that. And something simple, like if you can't bend down anymore, you can construct a simple box like this on sawhorse and just put PVC pipes over, and then just a plastic covering, and grow peppers and tomatoes and basil and all sorts of things in a simple garden box like this. So there's lots of options. I mean, even gutters. You know, you go, oh, I don't have anything, but have you got a side of a house, or have you got a fence or something? You could strap some old gutters. Now, gutters are a penny a dozen. I mean, they're everywhere, right? People are always upgrading their gutters, but, you know, perfect for salad crops like that. And actually, I wanted to say to you that what I have learned is amazing, is that you actually don't even need that to grow food. You can grow food in a basic bag of potting soil. You know, here they have literally slit open a bag of potting soil and grown some peppers in, and they're fruiting. And here they've got cucumbers on the left-hand side in a greenhouse, growing directly out of a bag of potting soil. No fuss, no muss. I mean, honestly, how easy could that be? So I came home when I saw this, And I decided to do it with salad garden, and I actually laid a bag flat, slit it open, and I grew a salad garden in it, and I took it to shows with me. Mm. I said, that's how easy it is. There's no excuses. So one of the first things I write about in my books is I learned a lot about soil building, because when we bought our acreage in Saanich in Victoria, it was actually 15 feet of clay fill. We didn't realize. And it was compacted solid. I mean, I didn't think I'd be able to grow anything in that. But with ongoing amendment, using, we started doing windrows for making compost in serious volume. Manure, we were surrounded by horse farms, so we collected all the horse manure going, and that went onto the land to introduce the bacteria. Leaves, all the oak leaves, we had the city come, 20 yards of leaves, really, and they were left to break down into the soil. And then the beach seaweed, we then even sowed the garden with a crop of green manure crop originally. In the first year, I threw everything I could at that clay fill to make something. And I was amazed how quickly, actually, by doing that with the 4 secrets of successful soil building, things changed. There were no worms to be found when we first moved on to that acreage. And after doing that, oh boy, everybody who put their fork into the soil was like, wow, look at the worms. Yeah, we had so many worms doing the work for us. And back to where we came in, Lucretia, about saying how much things have changed in the last 40 years. Yes, oh boy, it's a new world now. In the last few years, 20 years or so, we've had this woman called Dr. Elaine Ingham, who does research, soil scientist, and discovered that we hadn't really been paying any attention to what was below the surface of the soil. And in fact, there is a whole ecology that goes on and it's called the soil food web, and it's a living dependent system that involves all these different levels of creatures, from fungi to bacteria to protozoa, nematodes, all the way up to earthworms. And all these things and insects are working, playing their own unique role in maintaining the fertility of the soil. And actually, it is the bacteria in the soil, the microbes, that enable the plant to access the nutrient in the soil. The food we eat is nutrition. It comes from the soil, and it's the relationship between the plant roots and the microbial soil life which enables the transfer from soil to plant, and then from plant to us to feed us. So the health of the soil is absolutely critical. And so what we've been learning in retrospect is that we've been degrading and trashing the soil, compacting it and starving it and destroying the soil food web. And that what we really need to do, this is another secret that I've discovered, is it's all about no-till growing. It's about not pulverizing the top layer of the soil and leaving the soil food web intact, and feeding the soil by mulching, actually adding organic material to the top layer of the soil and allowing the soil to break it down and incorporate it. And so the board fork now is when we first accessed the farm, there were horses on the field that we were going to grow the food on. And we had, I spent $1,000 of manure dumped on the field, and then a tractor come in, and actually it was so compacted, we had to break it up. So he did a deep field plow, in went the manure, and we let it overwinter with a field pea crop, a green manure crop sown into it. And then we started soil building from that point on. But from that point on, we never have tractored the field again. The beds were dug and they are now loosened and turned with a broad fork. This is the tool that people are using. And I think that my experience, I feel like the difference in the health of the plants that we grow on the farm, which is astounding, the vigor and vitality and the production of those plants is because that we only feed the soil from the top and we don't plow it up. And I think that makes a massive difference. So if you don't have soil, some people say it's, oh, well, you know, it's all right for you. You've got land, you've got a garden, but I haven't got anywhere, I'm renting. But actually, I also discovered, this I'm going to share with you, that you can grow your own soil, and you can grow your own soil at the same time as growing the food. So like we just took, this is the back of our house. It was just an area where they used to have dogs roaming. And so we had this area here that I thought was in enough sun that we could build a lasagna bed. So how do you begin? So it's so simple. It's just about stockpiling the ingredients. So down goes flat layers of cardboard to act as a buffer, because in case there are any weeds or anything like that, and that'll eventually break down. And then you start building layers with things like grass clippings, or in this case, we had spoiled hay, and we had some manure, and we had leaves. And so we just started building the lasagna bed, and just layer and then another layer of manure on top of that. And some lime goes in just to add calcium and magnesium, which is important for a lot of green crops. And then finishing off, this is the key thing, like the lasagna with the cheese on top, you always finish off with a top layer of compost or topsoil. And that's the layer that you plant in. So as soon as you build your bed, you can actually sow seeds, or you can just transplant plants into it. So the same day you can be growing food from a space that was nothing. And eventually, because the nutrient value of that lasagna bed is so high, it doesn't need fertilizing, it doesn't need much watering because it holds moisture, and it feeds the plants and it produces masses of food in a small space. And at the end of the day, if the landlord says, sorry, you know, you're evicted or something, well, you could dig that up and take it with you. But, you know, you could basically undo the bed. You know, it doesn't have to be there. It could be used to feed the garden or whatever. So that has empowered a lot of people to go home and get started growing food, because I can do that. Yeah, just start stockpiling the ingredients. And another tip is, if you get an old shoebox, is like, let's get organized. So we're going to get started growing here. We're going to sort our seeds into cool weather seeds, the first ones to seed, the heat loving seeds, and the winter food garden. So you take out all the winter food garden, you don't need to sow those. You can put those aside for later, June or July. And then you sow your cool weather plants as early as possible under cover to get the best start, the earliest start. So right now, I'll show you in my greenhouse, I've got lettuce, onions, brassicas, peas, carrots, pushing the envelope, trying dill and things like that. And it's been quite sunny and mild, so actually things are working quite well. And then the heat lovers, plants such as tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, basil, they have a long growing season, so you want to get them started early, but they do need warm soil to germinate. So otherwise it's just in a cold greenhouse, not heated. But the heat lovers, I do just a homemade propagation box with some recycled windows on, with a heating mat or a heat cable in the bottom of the box. And that will get those heat lovers going and give them an early start. I have to laugh at this because I don't really have a particularly spreadsheet mentality, but some people do. And one of them is a volunteer. I grow food for the Ladysmith Food Bank garden. And this is our plot that we have. The top one is what she did at the end of last year when she plotted out the garden on her Excel spreadsheet or whatever and color mapped it and everything. And it's like, oh my God. And this year we revamped it because and changed it all. And this year's on the bottom. So actually we're practicing crop rotation by making sure that we don't have any plants, you know, because we had problems last year with the weather being so wet, with some clubroot on the brassicas. So, okay, we're taking the brassicas out of here and they're going over there, away from where they ever were grown before. And the tomatoes got blight last year, so the tomatoes are shifting to a completely different spot as well. So mapping your garden when you've sorted your seeds, you know, like, what am I going to grow? Where are they going to go? A good idea to be organized. And, you know, I wish that I had a walled kitchen garden, because when I used to go to England a lot, I'd always tour the estate gardens and visit their kitchen gardens. And there was a big move to go back to using heritage varieties, open pollinated, and that they would emulate the way that the Victorians used to grow food, which is like this, very neat and tidy, straight rows, lots of food, and no raised beds and pathways, just closely planted in straight rows, like lovely to have a wall kitchen garden. But I came home and this was my garden when we first laid it out, when we'd broken up from the fill, the clay fill, and I laid it out into 4 squares so we could do 4-year crop rotation. And I decided that I was actually not going to do raised beds. I was actually going to just do that I'd seen in the estate gardens in England, straight row planting. So in we went with Hoe A Row in 5, like every single row of this food is like took 5 minutes to plant. You simply take a hoe and you just go and make a furrow in the garden, and you take your transplants and you plonk it in the furrow, and you take your hoe again, and then you just cover them over and water them in, and you've got a 15-20 foot row of vegetables. And there's so much food here that we can thin out the lettuces and have like a fantastic salad. And we can eventually leave some, the best ones, to go to seed. And this is what it looks like later in the year. Because I actually used to run my seed business out of my food garden as well, and they can all work together. So, and it's lovely to see that cycle, that part of the seed to seed. So the intention was to grow all our fruits and vegetables, and we didn't have a 50 by 50 food garden, but we ended up building this long arbor, and it was 50 feet long, which was the size of the 50 by 50 food garden. And on the left-hand side, we did all the climbing, vining berries and kiwis and grapes. And on the right-hand side, it was all about the roses. And so we saw this beautiful display of roses as we drove down the driveway. And then we had grapes on one end, so we used it for all our climbing things. And with those grapes, I discovered with the dehydrator that, wow, I hadn't realized you could actually dry them and make your own raisins. And oh my God, they're so sweet. They are incredible. So we made grape juice and dried raisins, and then the kiwis were up the other end. And so just stuff growing everywhere. And up the posts, and actually somebody gave me all these tree posts because they'd built a smokehouse and they weren't using it anymore, and they'd stripped all this wood. He didn't know what to do with it, like, bring it to me, I'll build this arbor. And it was perfect. So we had thornless blackberries growing up, and just, you know, so much food production for freezing berries for smoothies in the winter, or just for salads and things like that, and also for making jams and jellies, and the cupboard full of food. Because when you talk about the zero mile diet, it's like you're going to be eating this all year round, so you want stuff extra from the garden, you know, so that you can be gorging on it from in the winter and getting all the goodness. So it looks like quite a lot of work, but I discovered really fast ways of doing things. And this one is, I'll share with you, it's the nifty carrot trick. And you can actually grow a whole bunch of carrots at the same time. And so all you have to do is get these, well, they're called 4-inch square pots, fill them up with potting medium, sterilized potting medium, and sprinkle 12 to 15 carrot seeds on top, and then just grow them on, like this is in my greenhouse. And eventually they'll get like 4 inches tall. And then what you do is you just take them into the garden and you just plant, you take it out of the pot and you just plant the whole thing in the ground without thinning, without disturbing. And then you sprinkle coffee grounds around, you mulch with coffee grounds, because this is all about keeping the carrot rust fly away. And the carrot rust fly is a real pest because she gets worms laid in the carrots and you get maggots in the carrots, and who likes that? This way, the coffee deters the carrot rust fly from finding the foliage and the carrots, and she doesn't lay her eggs there. She goes on flying off maybe to Starbucks or something. And also this way, there's no thinning carrots, which means you make the smell, which attracts the carrot rust fly, and you don't have any thinning to do. And when it comes to harvest, you just pull up an entire bunch of carrots, and it works like nobody believes me. And we do this at the KiwiCo Food Bank garden, and they said, nah, we don't trust you. We don't think that's going to work. And I said, okay, well, we'll do it. And it's like, wow, we had so many carrots, early carrots too. So a lot of people told me in the past, I could never grow carrots. And then they said, I can grow carrots now. So if you have problems, try that. And the other really great trick is what I call the Pea Gutter Trick, which I learned from Jeff Hamilton, which is a famous guru gardener from England. And so you get, old gutters, and you fill them up with potting soil, and you sow your pea seeds 1 inch deep and 1 inch apart. And when they're about 4 inches tall, you go to the garden, you've got your support, whatever, it could be like chicken wire or deer fencing, or in this case, I just used internetted bamboo canes for my pea supports. And you literally just peel the rooted peas out of the gutter. And again, you dig your furrow along both sides of the bamboo supports, and you end up with masses of peas, because every seed germinates. The birds don't get them, the slugs don't get them, and when you put them in, they're well rooted and they just take off. And so you get a really good yield, the best ever, way better than if you sowed the seeds hit and miss. This works like crazy. And I'm going to give you a tip for tomatoes too. Like one tip is, don't just grow the same variety all the time, year after year after year. You know, become adventurous and try some of all the amazing different types of tomatoes. There's hundreds of them, and you'll never know, you know, some are going to knock your socks off and some won't, but you can save seeds of them. There's lots of open pollinated heritage tomatoes still to be had. And the trick is, with the weather being so unstable and uncertain, you get them on into their own 4-inch pots, but then don't plant them out at 4 inches. Grow them on from 4-inch into gallons and wait till June to put them out. And then I'll show you. So then you take the tomato on the left out of the pot, and you strip it. You actually, a lot of people go, no, I couldn't do that. Said, yes, you have to do this. It's amazing, try it. Take the lower leaves off until on the right-hand side, all you have left is the truss at the top of the stem. And then you dig a deep hole and you bury the whole thing underground, and only the top truss is left above ground. So what's going to happen here is that is going to grow roots. All the part of the stem of the tomato that's underground is going to grow roots, and you'll have 10 times more tomatoes as a result of that. And the other trick is to make sure, because you're going to have so many tomatoes, that you've got a good solid stake, and that you keep on tying your tomatoes up so they don't flop over, and taking out the suckers. And at the end of August, you literally cut the top off your vine and you strip the leaves off. I know it sounds horrendous, but exposing the fruit to the sun. And then all those green tomatoes will ripen if you want your fruit to ripen. So you stop the growth and you set the fruit and you expose it to the sun. So San Marzano is the Italian heritage variety that we grow for bottling, and all winter long I just go and get a bottle of bottled tomatoes and use them for soups and casseroles and pasta dishes. And I don't know what they sell at the supermarket in winter. They call them tomatoes. I mean, goodness me, they look like tomatoes, but one has to question, how nourishing are they? And they honestly, there's no flavor there. So I try as much as possible. We just did a 25-foot row of Amish paste tomatoes last year, and that was enough for both of us, Goldie the farmer and I, to have tomatoes for winter. And then when June, July rolls round, it's time to think about your winter food garden, because believe it or not, we can grow about 50 different kinds of vegetables over the winter here in our climate. And the good news is that you don't need a greenhouse to grow them. You can just grow them outside. The main thing is to keep the bugs off them, so just to keep them up off the ground. And using the Hoe A Row in 5 method, you know, again, when you have kale seedlings ready to go in the garden, you just, again, make a furrow and pop in your kale seedlings and cover them over. And there's enough kale there to feed an army, to be honest. It's just amazing for fresh and vital, nourishing winter greens all winter long. From a mixture of different winter vegetables. And then I usually have these on the windowsill too, and I sprout them. And if you're a seed saver, then you know you'll have your own radish seeds and broccoli seeds and things like that that you can sprout. And all the dried fruit with a dehydrator. We have a fig tree on the farm. This is the fig. It is so delicious. And so dried figs and all the different fruit that we dry is then soaked in the night before going to bed, ready to have with hot oatmeal in the morning. So getting your vitamins and minerals from your fruit in the winter time. And included in the winter diet is all the winter squash that we grow as well, which are cured and used for warming squash soups and vegetable lasagna, and just roast vegetable, bake stuffed squash, all sorts of things. Fabulous to have winter squash, which keep right through the winter. And the same with russet potatoes. If you can't get seed potatoes, don't worry, go to the supermarket, buy organic russets. If you see organic russets and plant them, they're fine. That's how I started these, and they come back every year, and it's a beautiful storage potato. Along with other tubers that we can grow here over the winter, the sunchokes and the New Zealand yams in the front. So, you know, as we get more into growing more of our own food, you know, hopefully these things will circulate and more people will be growing them. And then the garlic, a beautiful garlic, we always try to have enough garlic that it lasts us through the winter time, and use it in lots of recipes. It makes a beautiful Christmas gift to give somebody a wreath of homegrown garlic, and it's a lovely thing to have hanging in your kitchen. And I actually show pictures of how to braid the garlic in my book. And this is what it looks like on the farm right now with the garlic. And that's how it's up. And we should be eating scapes soon. Garlic scapes will start just as last year's garlic is starting to sprout. We'll have the fresh garlic scapes, and then in July we'll have the fresh garlic again. So, you know, another cycle is completed. And this is the way farming is a different thing, and gardening, oh, it's way different scale. But you can notice that our pathways are actually lumited. That black landscape fabric is a dream come true for the farmers or a gardener, because you never ever have to worry again about weeds in your pathways. And it makes everything so neat and tidy. We sweep them, in fact. And, you know, it's Goldie decided right away that she was not going to waste her time weeding. And believe me, you know, like if we didn't have mulching and covering of pathways and things like that, we would have so much weeding to do in our 1.5 acre field, which is under full production. And then the other thing we see at the back of this photo is the remay on the cloche support, the PVC. It's a polytunnel. A lot of plants are covered to keep them, well, when you're farming commercially, everything has to be perfect. So it keeps the insects under control and keeps everything looking lovely and fresh. So yeah, I agree with you, Lucretia. We're coming to the end now. The choice is always sick care over health care. And, you know, having the confidence to trust the food that you're eating, have a relationship with a local farmer or grow it yourself. And by the diversity of the food that you can grow, this is just the last harvest of the year. When I went and I was taking all my plants out of the greenhouse and I stripped them off, and that I looked at the colors, I was like, wow, my goodness, you know, this is what we were eating after that, or preserving. And I'd just like to end, I'm not sure time-wise how we're doing, but I'd just like to end by quoting Dr. Jane Goodall, because it's so easy to be really frightened and scared of what's going on right now. It's a very, very strange time. It's a time of transformation. But, you know, the thing is that we're very amazing, miraculous and creative beings, human beings. And we're basically really good at the core. And we probably will do what we need to do, that we all don't have to do it all, that we can all just pick a little bit. Like she says, I like to envision the whole world as a jigsaw puzzle. And if you look at the whole picture, it's overwhelming and terrifying. But if you work on your little part of the jigsaw and know that people all over the world are working on their little bits, and then that's what will give us hope. That's what gives me hope. So I basically just shared with you my little bit of what I'm doing because it gives me hope. And thank you for listening. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Just brilliant. I smiled all the way through. Oh, and there's that beautiful book of yours. Where do you suggest? Where do you suggest people buy it?
It's online. I hate online stuff all the time, but or your local bookstore will order it for you if they haven't got it on the shelf. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a wonderful gift for people who are starting to grow food, because it's 30 years of, like, I talk about the vegetables as if they're my friends, because I got to know them so well. And I just share that.
You sure do. I mean, your presentation is just brilliant, Carolyn. I feel so happy right now. I'm realizing I'm just smiling all the way through. I do feel hopeful. And you make it sound so organized and fun, even for people who are just starting out, whether you're a new gardener or you've been gardening for years and years. There's just so much to learn. I love when you call this a time of transformation. I could not agree with you more, Carolyn. And I think part of that transformation is recognizing that our planet is a garden.
Yes.
The whole planet.
Oh, yeah. Oh gosh, yes. Yes. Honestly, I'll just share with you something that I decided, the way I look at life. is that I think that we are in heaven. We already live in heaven. We live in heaven on earth. And you don't have to die to go to heaven. Like, so let's not blow it. Let's enjoy it while we're here. Because, you know, that's what was given to us, you know, Adam and Eve and all that. But, you know, like, go forth, you know, every single thing you need and want is here for you. You know, that is basically what we have.
Oh, I absolutely agree. And the more of us who are speaking that language of abundance and of our garden planet, the more it will take root, excuse the pun. But we have a question here for you from Larry, and I've got a few questions too. Larry is asking, do you irrigate your garden? And if so, how? Or are you relying only on rain?
Okay, well, now the way that we're irrigating, it's actually, it's all computer operated, but we use drip tape on the beds. And when we plant the beds, we actually then lay the tape down on just, you know, either side of the plants. And so what happens, it's on a timer, it's like 20 minutes every day to every bed, and gets right to the roots. There's no loss through evaporation or anything. And then also there's no spread of disease, you know, when it comes to, say, blight on tomatoes. That is actually the best way, as long as you blow your all your pipes out and, you know, do the proper maintenance and make sure that there's no blockages and things like that, that the water is in fact getting. Usually a yearly service is required for that. But otherwise, there are micro sprays where some of the beds where there are, you know, bushier plants, you know, we have lines and then we use micro sprays, and they're good as well. So that's the most efficient. But, you know, yeah, you know, they say not to overhead water, but if an oscillator or a whirligig is, I use those too. For lawns and things like that, whatever. Yeah.
Thank you for that answer and for that question, Larry. Thank you very much. And thank you, especially Larry, for your continued support. Thank you. All of you have been so generous. Gabbing About Gardening is based on the gift economy. We use your donations to support our wonderful speakers. Today is Carolyn Herriot. We want to acknowledge and respect Carolyn and gift back to Carolyn for her amazing sharing, and you can be a part of contributing to that. So thank you for your donations, everyone. A question from Judy McKinley for you, Carolyn. What's your advice about slugs? I live in Haida Gwaii.
Oh, Haida Gwaii, right. Yeah. Okay, well, the thing about slugs is you have to get them where they're vulnerable, and they are slimy bodied mollusks, and they depend on being moist. So they will avoid sharp objects like crushed eggshells. We use those, like, for example, we've got a bed of spinach growing right now, and we've got them ringed with crushed eggshells to keep them, they won't crawl over that. Or a sharp-edged gravel, something like that on pathways. That's worked well for me. But actually, if you lure them in, if you really do have a massive problem, put a plank down, like just a board of wood in different places in the garden. And then once a week, just go flip it over, and you'll find slug eggs, and you'll find slugs in the daytime sheltering from the sun, and they come out at night and crawl around and eat everything. And then you just get rid of them, you know, and I just, please don't ask me to describe ways of killing slugs, they're so gross. But yeah, you want to deter them. So also copper, people have gone to the supermarket and bought some of those spongy things made out of copper wire and unraveled it and wrapped that around an area to be protected, because they can't crawl over the copper, it'll get an electric shock. So, and then just your basic saucer of beer. I know it sounds like an awful waste, but they drown in it. So a lot of people use that.
Or a combination of all the above. Suzanne's saying, what about salt? She's heard that works.
Oh, I know. But could you imagine being a slug? I mean, you know,
And now that you're vegan, this
yes,
must
I know.
really, this must really offend your
Oh my
sensibilities, this
God, that poor
conversation.
Slug. It's so ghastly what we do, you know, isn't it? Horrible.
Oh,
Slow down.
another question here from Judy for you, Carolyn. What do you consider the best sources of lime for your garden and farm?
Oh yeah, I usually, this is a good time. Well, ideally fall actually is the best time because then it would be broken down already. But the Dolomite lime, which should be now what's being offered at the garden centres, it's about $7 for a 20-kilogram bag, and it's got it comes in different grades. You can get it coarse, medium, or fine. Usually the medium one is easier to distribute. Otherwise, you have to have a, what do you call those things that a lawn spreader? Yeah, a lawn spreader. And so that adds calcium and magnesium to the garden. And also this year in particular, at the food bank garden, we had the club roots show up for the first time in the brassicas last year. That's really bad news. So we got them out of there as fast as possible. And the area that we're now going to grow the brassicas in, we're going to put a lot of lime down, a generous liming, because that deters clubroot in brassicas. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for that. Selena Smith is saying she's trying a new slug deterrent. She's lining or surrounding her beds with prunings from her very prickly berberis shrub. That's clever, girl.
Yeah.
Very clever.
That's good, yeah.
When you say a generous feeding of lime, Carolyn, can you get a little more specific? Kate Saunders wants to know.
Oh, well, these instructions are on the bag. It'll say 20 kilograms covers 1,000 square feet, whatever. So you can just pace out the area that you're liming. And basically your entire vegetable garden and lawn need liming. I don't know where you live. If you live on where it rains a lot in the winter, then it's advisable to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
okay.
follow the directions on the bag, basically.
Okay, we have a comment question from Mari. She's saying, do you have any opinions about making an arbor with cattle fencing? And any advice for growing courgettes vertically? She lives in Ottawa. And is there anyone you would recommend from this zone, zone 5, that has experience like you who I could learn from? There's no one like Carolyn. I'm sorry, Mari, I have to tell you. But I'll bet you do know somebody that might be in the Ottawa area. If you don't know off the top of your head, you and I can stay in touch and I can post something on Facebook.
I don't know how, I read the Globe and Mail and I don't know how much gardening wisdom there is. Des Kennedy used to write and he doesn't anymore. So yeah, if you get a good gardening magazine, and I don't know who, Mark Cullen is kind of a bit of a gardening personality back east. And then Lois Hole's got lots of books for the Alberta prairie gardening, which is cold. And I don't know. I mean, I've got my own favorites. I mean, I love Elliot Coleman. He's a guru to me. That guy is amazing. 4-season harvest and gardening naturally. He gardens on Maine on the east coast of the States. He's pretty incredible. And yeah, there's lots of, I think, just growing things, you know, according to your zone, and getting the seed which is appropriate. I use West Coast seeds. If we haven't saved them, then I'll order them from West Coast Seeds, because they trial them to make sure that they actually perform well in our climate on the West Coast. So it depends where you live. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm a big fan of Elliot Coleman too. So Mari, check out Elliot Coleman. I think it will be a similar climate to you. Also, I'll check in with Linnea Farm here on Cortez Island. They're probably connected to someone through some of their seed saving programs. They're part of the Eco Seed Collective. Carolyn, Mari was also asking your opinion about making an arbor with cattle fencing.
Well, I'm not actually sure what cattle fencing is. I'm going to say, is it like split cedar rails or something like that? I'm not quite sure. So I can't picture it, and I can't say, but I mean, honestly, I'm the recycling queen. I mean, if I need something and there's a source of it there, you know, then I'll make it work. So yeah, if anything that, as long as it's not going to rot, you know, that was set in concrete and those posts were peeled and they were cedar posts, and so they had that oil in them which preserved them. And so, you know, if you're going to, wasn't that big of a deal to construct it really, but think about how the state of the wood and how long it's going to last, because if you're growing grapes and kiwis and things up at them, then they'll be there for a long time as they mature. You know, you've got 20-25 years at least of growth from those vines, if not more.
Well, your pictures were just so inspiring, Carolyn. It was eye candy all throughout. You know, I loved when you said grow your own soil, because so many times we focus on feeding the plant, but you know, you've talked repeatedly about feeding the soil. So I'm going to ask you a question. As you know, I know we're just moving into spring, but when we get closer to fall and winter, can you tell us a little bit about the soil program that you move into fall and winter with? How are you protecting your soil, protecting the microbes in your soil, protecting the tilth and the texture over the winter? Because yes, on our islands, on Quadra Island, Cortez Island, we get a lot of rain too.
Yeah.
So can you tell us what your soil protection program is?
Well, when a crop comes out, we always feed the soil and let it sit there for a while until the following crop goes in. So that'll be over winter, say. And in some cases, if we feel that the soil needs like extra nitrogen or something like that, then we would sow a green manure crop to overwinter. And so we would do a mix of either winter wheat, winter barley, field pea, or winter rye, and fall rye, and then dig it in the spring and that would hold the microbes in place, and having the roots of the plants there, that would prevent erosion as well and keep the soil vital. But sometimes what we do, because of this weed thing, is, and this, you know, I kind of shudder when I saw this, and I thought, oh wow, this is a whole other labor-saving way of doing this. We've got 50-foot and 80-foot long beds on the farm, lots of them. And if we didn't do anything, they would all be covered in weeds, and the time to weed all that is just ridiculous. And actually, so I think it's great that, you know, the farmers got the weed thing totally under control, with all the pathways covered. And then what we'll do is we'll actually mulch the beds. We'll put some manure down for the microbes, to add the microbes to the soil, and then we'll put some leaves on top of that to insulate. And then, you know, we'll put the lumite on top of that to block off any weeds germinating. And then the next year, when it's time to plant the bed, you literally would just take off the lumite, the black landscape fabric, and there's worms, it's all going crazy under there, and the soil is like ready and totally weed free to plant. And we have got, it's great actually that the weeds are under control. I can't express it enough, because as a grower, the weeding and the watering are the two key things that gobble up most of your time in the garden. If you can cut those down, it's great.
Yep, absolutely. And I just love your lasagna approach and keeping it covered, you know, more and more. If we do nothing but keep the ground covered, we're many steps forward, aren't we?
Yes, and leaves, we can gather leaves in the fall, you know, keep your grass clippings. I mean, get spoiled hay from a horse person. They just want to get rid of it. They don't know what to do with it all. And there's all this wonderful bulk organic amendments out and about in the community, you know, that we can feed our soil with and improve it and replenish the nutrients, because the key thing here is that it's about soil health. Like, the quality of the food that is grown on the soil is all to do with the content and the fertility of the soil. Because if the nutrients aren't present in the soil, then they can't be taken up by the plant, which means you can't access them when you eat the food. And that is my thing about the future, is that I worry that, oh my goodness, we are moving away from the food that is grown in soil and ripened by sun. And that to me is real food. And a lot of the food that people are eating from the supermarkets is grown under glass on a drip feed system with chemicals, you know, and they can still call it organic. But the point is that we really don't know what's missing from the food as a result of that. And what's the point of eating? It's about nourishing the body, and there's no point in eating if there's no nutrient in the food. And of course, the research shows that over the years, as the soil has become increasingly depleted, that the nutrient content of food has gone down and down and down, and we're sicker and sicker as a result, and our immune systems are so compromised. Really, this thing is about keeping in contact with nature, because they say that you're happier when you get your hands dirty, which is why people love gardening so much, because it's about the microbes. You actually boost your gut microbiome. And
don't you love that?
Yes, and a happy gut is responsible for your feelings about how you feel. Actually, it's the gut brain thing again. We go back to that, and it all starts in the soil. We're all interconnected. You know, we are mostly bacteria. We are all interconnected. I think what's this age of transformation is that we're just finding out who we are. What is a human being actually, and what makes us tick? Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love your perspective. You know, I could just hang out and listen to you gab forever. There's just everything that you say just makes such beautiful sense, you know. And not long ago, people just started to, well, there was a movement underfoot to really think about growing medium. It wasn't even about soil. You could use sawdust, you could use vermiculite, you could use foam. Then you just had to add these liquid nutrients and yada, yada. You're going to grow phenomenal lettuce and tomatoes. And yet, like you were saying, this whole microbial chain and nutrient chain is really dependent on healthy soil, and getting our hands in the soil is what's going to keep us healthier than anything else we could possibly do, don't you think?
Yeah, it's like the relationship we have with the insect world. You know, we go, oh my God, you know, bugs, kill bugs, you know, get rid of them all. But just a moment, you know, there's like just a minute number that are actually doing damage, and the rest of them are all our allies and friends and working quietly away to make everything work for us. And the same with the bacteria, like germs, get the disinfectant, kill everything, sterilize. Well, no, it's the opposite. You know, the more dirty, but you know, the more exposed we are to the more bacteria. And having a pet, in fact, makes a kid a lot healthier.
And it makes me feel so much better about my housekeeping, Carolyn. And I have an amazing immune system.
Yeah.
Let me ask you about interplanting with flowers and herbs. Do you have any special companion planting methods that you found really useful?
Oh yes, I use like things like basil with tomatoes because they improve the flavor and they such great companions. And the same with parsley with tomatoes. So I usually put a ring around the tomato bed of those. And then things like dill with cabbage is a companion. Keep fennel out of the garden. Fennel, nothing likes fennel. It's a big no-no. So
No
um,
fennel.
yeah,
Oh,
fennel's terrible. Yeah, plants do not like it. Things like allowing borage to self-seed happily around the place is great because all plants love that. And actually being a seed saver and having, it's the simple little flowers of a lot of the plants that go to seed that the insects, the beneficials come to feed on. They don't like fancy floozy flowers. They can't get in there and they can't feed on them. They just the little simple single flowers that they can just light and access the pollen really quickly. So yes,
well,
just as
that's quite the image, that fancy floozy flower.
well, they've been bred now to suit people's taste,
True.
you know, and
So
they become
true.
frou.
Keep it simple. Once again, keep it simple.
Yeah.
Suzanne is asking your advice about worm castings. Do you use them? If so, how do you use them? And when do you usually add mulch?
Well, mulching all the time is just because not digging stuff in and just like layering it on top. So whenever you can use mulch anytime at all, especially if it's dry and you want to lock in moisture. The worms come in the manure actually. So when we are feeding our beds with manure, which we do yearly, we are adding the red wrigglers that way. And so then when we feed the soil, with leaves and compost, and then we're feeding the worms and then off they go and they really populate quite quickly. We do actually have a separate worm box as well, which makes the castings, but also makes liquid tea when it rains as well. So we use that sometimes. Anything to do with worms is good news because they are the aerators of the land by tunneling through and opening up the soil, the texture, making it more friable, and then leaving their castings, which is probably one of the most fertile, wonderful ways to feed a plant is with worm castings. Wow, they're very powerful.
So wonderful worms. Worms are wonderful. Well, you brought up compost tea. Tell us some of your favorite compost tea. I know in your book, A Year on the Garden Path, and probably in your 0 Mile diet, your 0 Mile books, which I'm going to get both of as soon as we get offline here. And everybody else, I recommend you do that as well, because all of this information and much, much more is in the 0 Mile diet and the 0 Mile gardening book of Carolyn's. So tell us about the compost tea that you make most often and why and how you make it.
Can you see that my book cover on the screen right now?
Yeah.
Do you want to just stop the share and then we can see, we can be full screen again?
You bet.
I can't seem to get my mouse to go to stop share.
I'm not seeming
so
to be able to do it either. Why don't you go ahead and yak?
Okay.
Keep gabbing and I'll see if I can figure this out.
Yeah, oh, don't worry. What was the question again?
Just tell us anything you think we need to know about compost tea.
Oh, compost tea. Oh, yes. Oh, well. Well, first of all, you need a 45-gallon food grade barrel, plastic. If you can get that, that's great. You're off to a great start. And then you need a broom, an old broom handle. And then you need a burlap bag. And you decide, well, you can make a mixed tea if you like. For example, like if you just wanted to make comfrey tea, you could, and you had like a big patch of comfrey, you can fill up your barrel and just stuff your comfrey leaves into it.
There, I think I've got the right share now so that we can all see each other. So
Okay, and
you're a huge fan. There, can you see us okay, Carol?
yes, yeah, that's fine.
That is nice. That is great to see everybody. Hey, a quick shout out to Whitney. Oh, our wonderful Whitney. Whitney Vanderleest Carolyn is one of our soil health ambassadors. She's from Cortez Island, and Whitney has just had a new baby gardener.
Aww.
She's showing us baby. Unmute Whitney and tell us a little something. Congratulations, another gardener.
Congratulations. Exciting. Oh,
Thank you.
the baby.
This is Carly Annalita Nygren, and Annalita is actually the phylum of the worm. So her middle name is after the little worms that help our garden. So it's funny that we're talking about that. Yeah.
Oh, she's beautiful, Whitney.
Thank you.
Carolyn, Whitney almost single-handedly, I think single-handedly, but I don't want to not recognize anybody else, has been able to create a community composting program, a first step towards a community composting program on Cortez Island. It's hard to believe that in 2021 we didn't already have one, but not only does she make beautiful babies, she makes amazing compost too.
That's amazing.
Yes, thank you.
Well, we're looking forward to having you back in the community. Just let us know if there's anything you need, Whitney.
Sounds good. Thanks so much. We'll be back on Cortez tomorrow. So I'm excited to see
Oh.
what's going on in our garden.
Beautiful.
Yes.
I'll be in touch for sure.
Thanks for telling me.
Thank you. So just keep layering. I love that message of yours, Carolyn. You know, people sometimes make things way more complex than they need to be, don't you think?
Yes, it's very simple. I always found that the answers were right in front of me all the time. I wasn't seeing them. I thought, oh, wow. Oh, yeah, I can do that. That's great. As far as compost tea is concerned, I mean, you've got things like comfrey, which are nettles, which make wonderful tea. They're so rich in minerals. And then you can just actually take some aged manure, or you can take some ready compost, put it in a burlap bag and tie it tight with some twine or rope or something, and just use it like a tea bag in your 45-gallon barrel, which is filled with water. And then what I used to do is actually, which was so much fun, is I would invite anybody who ever came into the garden to grab the broom handle, which was sticking inside the barrel, and start stirring like crazy, because I was trying to aerate my compost tea. I wanted to multiply the organisms, and the way to do that was to make it bubble, and the way to make it bubble was to keep on stirring like the witches. And so I said, okay, everybody was constantly stirring away to make this, and it would bubble away, and then I would use it to in a watering can to water things in, or I'd use it on a spray in case something was needing a little TLC, something extra. Yeah. And at that point I was really mad because fish fertilizer was $30 a gallon, and I thought, I used to pay $10 a gallon for fish fertilizer. I'm not buying it anymore. I'm going to make compost tea for free.
Well, we find ways around whatever limitations we have, whether it's financial resources or whatever. But I love what you said right at the beginning of our gabbing, Carolyn, and that is about stockpiling your resources and seeing resources where other people see nothing but garbage or trash. Gardeners see resources, and that makes us very resourceful people. And I think that's really, a huge part of the new way that we are approaching gardening, and part of this transformation that you are really leading in so many ways, Carolyn. People are just sending in so much appreciation and thank you to you, Carolyn. A quick question from Judy about cover crops or cardboard. How do you cover garden areas with perennials for the winter? Do you just work around or can you go on top? I think that's a generalized question about keeping it covered for the winter. Can you reiterate that?
Well, I'm not sure, I'm a bit confused if you're suggesting using the cardboard as the covering agent, or if the cardboard is now at the base of, if you were building, say, a lasagna bed or something like that. But actually, one of my students did take his front yard, and he did lasagna the entire front yard. I can't believe it. And he then did put a single sheet of cardboard boxes down over the top, and then put slits through it, and planted his entire garden through it. So that was his weed suppression level, and also locked the warmth into the soil too. I have a photo of that. I was most impressed, but I'd say whatever, you know what, it kind of works. Whatever you want to do works. Yes, try things.
That's great. It's really important that we try things, that we keep the soil covered, that we keep layering, that we are always thinking about choosing seeds that we can save. That means open pollinated and heritage seeds. And I'm so glad that you brought a focus to that again. Carolyn, you have covered so much remarkable information and territory. I'm just so excited and jazzed. I want to get out there and get dirty. I suggest everybody go outside and get dirty. Next week, we have Dr. Nancy Turner with us. She is Canada's most beloved ethnobotanist. I sure love her like wild, and she is wild because she knows everything about wild plants. She knows how to use them for food, how to use them for clothing, and her teachers have been our Indigenous people of Canada, and she pays them great honor and shares the knowledge that she has learned from them. Her books are remarkable. Like you, Carolyn, she has many books out. And Nancy, Dr. Nancy Turner, is our guest on Gabbing about Indigenous gardeners and gardens. Next Monday, same time, same place. Carolyn, I always like to invite our special garden teacher to take us out at the top of our hour, coming up to 5 o'clock, with your parting words of wisdom to all of your garden devotees, your gardener students here. What would you like, what thought can you leave us with as we head outside and get dirty?
Oh, I think just keep the faith. Yes. Just believe that all this is for a purpose, like what's happening right now is for the betterment of humanity. And it had to happen, it has to happen, because we can't go on destroying our wonderful planet. It's all wrong relationship to that supports us. So yeah, we're going to be better off in the end. But change is hard. People hate change, and but change is happening all the time. You can't stop it. So go with the flow, and just hang on to what we know is the right thing to do, I think. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you for those beautiful words of encouragement. Keep the faith. It's all for a good reason. Don't forget that. Now go outside and get dirty. Remember that Gabbing About Gardening is based on the gift economy. We hope we have given you a gift, and we hope you will give us a gift. Thank you so much for your donations and contributions. Carolyn, I sure hope you'll come back and gab with us again sometime.
Anytime. I love talking about plants. You can't stop me. Yes, it's marvelous. Thank you. It's great fun, and have a great growing season to everybody out there.
Well, you are wonderful, and we're all in love and energized. Goodbye, everybody. See you next Monday. Gabbing About Gardening with Dr. Nancy Turner. Thank you for coming. Carolyn, oh my goodness, I am so jazzed. You make me so happy. Look at me. Everybody looks so happy there.
That's nice. Thank you. It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, and lovely Whitney nursing her beautiful baby. Now that's nourishment right there.
That's our hope for the future right there. Yeah.
That's right too. Tony, nice to see you. Lovely. Thank you for joining us.
Bye now.
Okay, girl. Carolyn, you're the cat's meow. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for the invite.
Okay. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Bye. See you all soon. See you next week.